Hey guys, so today we're going to be learning about return values. Now, return values are one of the most useful things in any programming language. What return values do is allow you to pass around different either integers, strings, doubles, or any other type of object to another method. Okay? So basically what's happening is you have a method go through a whole bunch of instructions and then return a value back to wherever that method was called. So what exactly do return values do? Well, what return values do is allow us to return a specific value from a method. And this value can be basically anything. It could be an integer, it could be a double, it could be a string, or like any other type of object that you specify, that you want from that method. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to decompose our code. So let's go through an example. Let's say we have one method that requires 100 lines of code. Well, we really don't want to write just one method that requires 100 lines of code. Like, one, it's going to be extremely hard to debug. Two, it might cause problems if you change a value in it. And three, people looking at it are not going to understand what you're doing there. So it's always best to decompose your code as much as possible. But those methods aren't going to be really useful unless we can pass values back to the main method. That's where return values come in. You're able to specify what value a certain method is able to return, and you're able to return that value back to wherever that method was called, and you're able to store it in a variable back in wherever you called the method. So what this allows us to do is decompose our code and make our code understandable, which should always be a top priority in any coding situation. So the basic limitation to return values is that you can only return one value at a time. So if you need multiple values for a procedure, then you're going to have to call two methods in order to get those two values. Okay, so let's take a look at different return types. Okay, so let's say we want to return a string value. Okay, so we call a method like normal, have the access type. Then we put the return type, which we want to return a string value. So we put string where the return type is supposed to be. And then we, put the method name. Okay, now for code inside this method, you can have whatever code you want, but in this case I want to keep it really simple. So I just created a new string object, called it str, and put the value for str as hey, because of course I wanted to say hey to you guys. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say return str, and what that's going to do is that's going to return the value of str back to whoever called this method, which in this case is going to be hey. Okay, so let's look at another example. Okay, let's say we want to return an integer value. We give it the access type, we give it the return type, which in this case is an int for integer, and then we give it the method name. Okay, and then we can have as much code as we want in here, but I'm going to keep it simple. So I created an integer and called it a, and assigned it the value 2 plus 2. Okay, so effectively a is equal to 4. Okay, now what I did here is I just returned a, and so whoever called this method widget is going to get back the value a, and it can store that value in a variable or whatever it wants to do with that object. Okay, so let's take a look at how this can be useful. Okay, so let's say we have our main method, which is run, and let's say we want to print out a value. Okay, so what we can do is we can call a method. In this case, if we want to get a string value, we can allocate a variable in this method. okay, we'll call it str, and then we can store whatever we get from method 1 into str. So let's say we call method 1, and what that will do is that will return a string object which is hello. Okay? Now, we call this returns, and it returns this and stores it into this variable str. Okay? And then what this does is it holds this value str in, so then we can use it down here where we can print out the value str. And what this is going to print out is hello. Okay? But let's say we want to print out, an integer. Okay? So let's erase this, and let's say we're going to call a. Okay? So a does a very similar thing. It allocates a variable of type integer, and then calls method 2. Now method 2 returns an integer, and in this case it will return 42, because 42 is the answer to everything. Okay, later on we're like, hey, I don't want to print out hello, I want to print out, hey, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this right here, just delete it, and then I'm going to say, hey, okay? And then I'm going to print out str here. Now str's value is going to call method 1, method 1 returns the new value which is hey, and then put that into str, which then system.out.println is going to then print out hey. So we're able to change our code extremely efficiently just by being able to decompose into other methods that return values back to us.